The Wars of the Roses were a series of brutal civil wars in England, fought between two rival branches of the royal Plantagenet family. The House of Lancaster, symbolized by a red rose, and the House of York, represented by a white rose. Though the name Wars of the Roses came later, the conflict spanned 3 decades and brought the English monarchy to the brink of collapse. Both houses traced their lineage back to King Edward III, but it was political instability, not just bloodlines, that triggered the war. The Lancasters had held the throne since 1399, starting with Henry IV, and continuing through his famous warrior son, Henry V. But when Henry V died young in 1422, his 9-month-old son Henry VI became king, ushering in a long period of weak, unstable rule. During Henry VI's minority, England was governed by a royal council. But as the young king came of age, it became clear he lacked the strength and decisiveness needed to rule. He was prone to mental illness and easily manipulated by others, especially his strong-willed wife, Margaret of Anjou. Under their rule, corruption grew, the economy faltered, lawlessness increased, and England steadily lost ground in the ongoing 100 Years' War with France. Amid this chaos, Richard, Duke of York, emerged as a powerful noble with a legitimate claim to the throne. York was descended from Edward III's second surviving son, Lionel of Antwerp, while the Lancastrians descended from a younger son, John of Gaunt. While York might have never pushed his claim under stable rule, the disorder of Henry VI's reign gave him reason to act. By the early 1450s, York had gained strong support, especially from powerful families like the Nevilles, Mowbrays, and Borchias. One of York's most important allies was his nephew, Richard Neville, the Earl of Warwick, later known as the Kingmaker. When Henry VI fell into a catatonic state in 1453, York was made protector of the realm. But when the king recovered in 1455, Queen Margaret's faction pushed York out of power, forcing him to raise arms in self-defense. The first battle was fought at St. Albans in May 1455. York's forces won and several Lancastrian leaders were killed, but instead of ending the conflict, it triggered a series of uneasy truces and reignited hostilities. The Civil War resumed in earnest in 1459, after Margaret prepared to attack York again. After an initial Yorkist victory at Blorheath, they were defeated at Ludford Bridge, forcing York to flee to Ireland and his allies to scatter. A pro-Lancastrian parliament was convened at Coventry, condemning York supporters and executing those they captured. But the conflict had grown too large to contain. York's ally Warwick regrouped in France and returned in 1460, defeating Lancastrian forces at Northampton and capturing King Henry. York claimed the throne outright, but in a compromise, Parliament agreed Henry could remain king until his death, after which York or his heirs would inherit. This effectively disinherited Henry's son, Prince Edward, enraging Queen Margaret. Margaret's army struck back. In December 1460, York was killed at Wakefield, along with one of his sons. But the Yorkist cause was far from over. York's eldest son, Edward, rallied his father's supporters, won a major battle at Mortimer's Cross, and entered London in early 1461. He was declared King Edward IV, just days before defeating Margaret's army at the Battle of Towton, the largest and bloodiest battle of the war. The Lancastrian leaders fled to Scotland, and Edward was crowned. Yet peace didn't last long. Though Edward IV was king, real power in the early years rested with Warwick, who crushed remaining Lancastrian resistance in the north and in Wales. Henry VI was captured and imprisoned in the Tower of London, and Warwick worked to restore order, strengthen the crown's finances, and even engage in international diplomacy. But a rift grew between Warwick and Edward. Edward's secret 1464 marriage to Elizabeth Woodville, a commoner with ties to the Lancastrians, shocked Warwick. The Woodville family rose quickly in court, taking key positions and pushing Warwick aside. In 1467, Warwick's frustration exploded. Edward dismissed Warwick's brother from the position of chancellor and rejected a diplomatic marriage plan Warwick had arranged. Warwick then rebelled, allied with Edward's own discontented brother, George, Duke of Clarence, and supporting a popular uprising in the north. After defeating the king's army at Edgecote in 1469, Warwick captured Edward and executed key members of the Woodville family. But Warwick couldn't rule without Edward. The king soon regained control, and in 1470, Warwick fled to France. There, in a shocking twist, he made peace with his former enemy, Margaret of Anjou, and pledged to restore Henry VI. With help from King Louis XI of France, Warwick returned, deposed Edward IV, and placed Henry VI back on the throne in a brief readaptation. Edward fled to the Netherlands, where he gained support from Burgundy. He returned to England in 1471, landing at Ravenspur. Quickly regaining support, he met Warwick at the Battle of Barnet, where Warwick was killed. On the same day, Margaret landed in England with her son, but before they could reach safety in Wales, Edward defeated them at Tewkesbury. Prince Edward was killed, Margaret captured, and shortly after, Henry VI was quietly murdered in the Tower. Edward IV ruled unchallenged for the next 12 years, but the seeds of betrayal were still there. In 1478, Edward had his brother Clarence executed for treason, likely in secret, possibly by drowning in a barrel of wine. Then, in 1483, Edward suddenly died. His young son was crowned Edward V, but power quickly shifted to Edward's brother, Richard, Duke of Gloucester, who declared the boy illegitimate and took the throne as Richard III. Shortly afterward, Edward V and his younger brother disappeared from the Tower, likely murdered, though no one was ever proven guilty. Many turned against Richard, including former Yorkist supporters. Their new hope became Henry Tudor, a Lancastrian with a weak but legitimate claim through his mother. Henry gained support from France, discontented nobles, and even Yorkist effectors. In 1485, he invaded England and met Richard at the Battle of Bosworth Field. Richard was killed in the fighting, and Henry was crowned King Henry VII, and in the Wars of the Roses. To cement peace, Henry married Elizabeth of York, Edward Ivy's daughter, uniting the two rival houses and beginning the Tudor dynasty. Some historians say the final battle came in 1487 at Stokefield, when Henry crushed a Yorkist uprising supporting the pretender Lambert Simnel, but Bosworth remains a symbolic end of the wars. In the end, the Wars of the Roses left England deeply scarred, economically weakened, politically fragmented, and socially traumatized. Yet from this devastation rose a new era of stronger monarchy, laying the foundation for the Tudor Golden Age.